Shit alfei shana hegbila hochmel yoina la'avodas b'nei adam v'ishtadlusam ala shlemus. God determined there be a limit of 6,000 years, within which a person or people can serve God, and as a period in which they can strive to attain perfection. V'yachar kach, after those 6,000 years, yischadesh ha'olam b'tzura cheres, the world will be renewed in a different form. And this is the way he seems to explain the teaching which says that the world will exist for 6,000 years, but after the year 6,000 it will be destroyed. He doesn't put it that way, that it will be destroyed. Rather, he says it will be renewed in a different form. So he understands apparently that the teaching which says the world will be destroyed means something like the world as we know it will cease to exist, but it will be transformed into a different state. That's how he seems to explain it. And there are those strains in Jewish thought which explain it that way. Ru'uya lamashi ya'asebo achrei ken, and this new form that the world takes on will be fitting for what is to take place from that point on. Dainu, which means ha'noha nitzchis lezoichim la, those who will attain eternal reward and pleasure for those who earn it, who have deserved it. V'terem yichlu sheshes alafim ele, and before these 6,000 years transpire, hine tzarech shetamoid ha'uma ha'nivcheres b'matzava ha'shalem, the chosen people have to attain their designated state of perfection, sheyuchlu la'atek hadvarim achar kach ele nitzchius, in order for them to therefore transmute that perfection into the type of eternal perfection that they're going to be having, that they're going to have, that's intended after the period of 6,000. V'zeh ma shehuftachnu alav shi'al kol panim. This is what we were promised, at least. V'hemtzoi lezeh hiye echad mizera David. The venue through which this takes place is going to be a person who is a descendant of David, sheyivcharehu ha'adon baruch hu lezeh, who will be chosen by God for this purpose, to catalyze the perfection of the Jewish people as much as possible in this world, in order to bring the world to its conclusion and prepare them for the higher degree of perfection that's awaiting for them after the 6,000. V'yazrehu sheyatzliach bo, and God will also help him so that he will succeed in his purpose of bringing perfection upon the Jewish people. And who is this? Melech HaMashiach. This is the Mashiach. V'hinei, bezmanoi v'al yadoi yesuknu Yisrael tikun gadol. Through him and in his time, the Jewish people will undergo a great rectification, a great elevation. V'kol ha'briya achareim, and all of creation after them as well. So that literally Mashiach will catalyze the realization of the potential for perfection of the Jewish people, and that will then have an effect on the rest of the world as well. Shegirbe hatov b'chol hatstadim, and good will be increased and multiplied in all ways, in many different ways. V'yasu hara legamre, and evil will be passed away. We discussed this yesterday. Either it means that evil will be eliminated, or evil will cease to exist because it is transformed into good. Ben b'masha nogea l'nefesh, whether we're talking about evil that pertains to the nefesh, uben masha nogea l'guf, or whether it has to do with the body. What does this mean? What is evil that has to do with the body or the soul? Dainu lev ha'evin yaseh lev basar. The heart of stone will be made into a heart of flesh. So this also seems to imply what I was suggesting earlier, and what I said explicitly yesterday, that it's not going to be that evil is going to be entirely removed, but that it's going to be transformed into good. And he gives an example of that. For example, a heart of stone turns into a heart of flesh. It's still a heart, but it changes character. So that heart, which was hardened to goodness because of the Yetzer Hara, it was calloused to spirituality because of evil, that soul will become no longer hardened and calloused, but soft and spiritually sensitive, like flesh. And there will therefore be increased the inclination within people to lean towards goodness, in a way that they will not be drawn after materialism at all, but rather they're always going to be drawn towards Torah, or towards the service of God and towards Torah, and they'll become strengthened through it. And commensurate to this will be people's sensation of serenity and harvacha. I don't know exactly how to translate that. How do they do it in English?
Spirituality?
That's what he says?
He says in quotes, well, rather he will constantly lean towards serving God and following his Torah.
Right.
And in this manner,
yes,
man will strengthen himself, and then in kind of quotes or brackets it says spiritually.
Okay, spiritually, and then what?
As a result, prosperity and tranquility will increase.
Okay, that's it. Tranquility, he says harvacha is prosperity. So tranquility, I said serenity, and harvacha, he says prosperity. Prosperity implies material prosperity. I wouldn't have quite translated it that way. But I would have said harvacha is like a widening of one's consciousness. So he will be serene, and if there maybe there's a word for this, but that's what I'm saying, like of a higher consciousness. Unlike people who are constantly nowadays in pursuit of material well-being, they are not at all tranquil. They're constantly looking for more and more, and they become very narrow-minded as well. But as opposed to, but in contradistinction to the way many people act nowadays, in these times, people are going to be running after the service of God and Torah, and the more they do so, the more tranquil and the more, again, open-minded is not quite the right word, but you think, but they have a more expanded state of consciousness. Yeah.
So on this, and what you said last time about the 3 levels of soul, was nefesh the lowest one?
Yeah.
So nefesh is the animal soul, the materialistic soul. So is it fair to assume that most people today haven't perfected the nefesh soul?
Because we're so drawn towards materialism and material types of pleasures?
Yes, so we're still stuck at stage 1, and whereas some of these great rabbis who were born with no attachments then, they maybe perfected it previously and they're on like stage 2 or 3 now?
That's logical to assume.
So we can
it's just frightful to think.
I'll know how far we've done.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And then, so what? So
on the other hand, we're simultaneously challenged with things having to do with the Emunah.
Is that level 2?
Well, that's neshama.
That's what's
3
levels? And
Ruach. There's a nefesh, ruach, and neshama.
Ruach
is like spirit.
What does that mean?
And generally, it's associated with our verbal or emotional plane, as opposed to neshama, which is more of the intellectual.
So it seems
plane.
like kind of doing all 3 at once.
Yeah, so I was starting to say, it could be that we're actually working on all 3.
Is that a thing? Like,
yeah, could
you do one perfected, done.
Yeah, but there, it could be that we have a mix of many different people. Could be that there are many people who are generally more challenged with things having to do with physiology, and others more with philosophy.
So there's no way really to tell where we're at.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell where we're at and where any particular individual is. But the Arizal does write, based on the Gemara, that the things that a person finds most challenging are an indication that those are the things which he needs needs most work on. And it seems like most people are very challenged by sleep and by sexuality. That's what it seems.
So most people are kind of need to work on the same things.
Yeah, it seems like that's really most people's impediment to serving Hashem nowadays are that the need. Yeah, Sleeping in? Yeah.
What's
Just sleeping and sleeping and sleeping.
Like, is 8 hours considered sleeping?
What?
Is 8 hours sleep a lot?
I just mean a lot of people just, they just,
Would you rather go to chakras or sleep?
sleep. Yeah. Sleep.
Still rather sleep.
People have very, very difficult to get up. What it does, it's not about the hours of sleep. The hours of sleep. It's
God
just about,
wouldn't put you here to test you with sleep, sure.
it's to get up and serve Hashem.
Yeah, I guess it's drive and stuff.
Yeah. It's I would say that's associated with the realm of a belief. The person kind of wakes up and sincerely, wholeheartedly believes that there is a creator of the soul, and there is a restorer of the soul, and there is a returner of the soul, and he has just done all of that for me. We'll jump out of bed.
Yeah.
Wow. But we just right. And then the other thing.
Snooze button.
Hits the snooze button, yeah. And it seems that the other area of great challenge is what the other thing that I mentioned, and
What do you mean by sexuality?
meaning the drive to be in, the drive to express that and be involved in that and anything that has to do with that. We're very, very distracted by it. I think society is very distracted by it. Look at the billboards, look at the advertisements, look at the magazines. I'm saying, in my humble opinion, it seems to me that these are two of the greatest challenges. I think they have to do with of belief and sensuality.
And when the Arizal said something, does he get it? Is he a philosopher, or does he get it from text?
From text.
So that's
Yes,
got
but
a real basis.
Kabbalah, He's saying that Kabbalistically, the things that a person finds the most challenging is a sign that these are the things that he needs to correct from a previous reincarnation.
And that would have come from God at some point, that knowledge, like that wisdom. God
Maybe.
inspired his own
Yeah, it's based on verses. His teachings are based on verses, but there might be understandings of those verses which are more divinely inspired.
So it's like it's implicit. It's not like.
It could be explicit. It could be implicit.
Yeah. Okay.
See that Cheshbon Nefesh says something similar in terms of overcoming very big struggles, that you can get to a point, if it's a very big struggle, that even the thought of overcoming it, it's as though you've done a mitzvah by trying to avoid it. And so, even though we have all these big challenges, our ability to fulfill the mitzvah, like being graded on the curve, is also very true as well. So even though we might have these temptations when we go out and we see, temptation, if the mere fact of us looking away from it could in itself be a mitzvah.
Sure. For sure.
Even though
It's sur mirah. It's if anything, at the very little, it's sur mirah. He's making an proactive effort to refrain from evil.
it's like there's a homeless guy across the street, and you have tzedakah, and you want to go give it to him, but there's cars crossing, and it takes like 5 minutes before you can get across the street, and then he's not there. But the fact that your intentions were to go over there and give him tzedakah, you still get that mitzvah.
Very good. What happens if a person intends very much? He intends very, very much not to transgress, but he does. Then what? So what does God look at? Does he look at his very strong intention and effort not to? Or does he look at the fact that he ultimately did? What's that? I don't view it that way. Hashem will reward him for sincerely not wanting to and doing what he could to avoid it, and realizing that he's a spiritual weakling in a generation which has tremendous challenges, and he says, good job.
Well, we view a mitzvah as like...
Good job. He's like swimming upstream. It's almost like it's a lost battle, but he's fighting the battle. So Hashem says, good job. It's not about the result. It's about the effort.
It's on a curve. When you like have a mitzvah, and I'd say I begin a mitzvah, and someone finishes a mitzvah, the person who finishes a mitzvah gets the credit.
That's true. That we often say that it's al shem gomro, but this person still gets the effort for. He certainly gets the reward for making effort in the mitzvah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he might not get the reward of the mitzvah, but he certainly gets rewarded for attempting to make the mitzvah, and that's kind of like what he said. And we said that machshava tova mitzvah l'maaseh. That a person has the intention to do a mitzvah, but for whatever reason beyond his control, he's not able to do so, even if somebody else does it. It's not like he gets the mitzvah and I don't. We say, no, if he had been able to do it, he would have done it. So we say, it's as if he's done it. What does it mean to say it's al shem gomro? that the mitzvah is associated with the one who fulfilled it, who did it. How is that different than the person who, really intended to do it, wasn't able to? I'm not sure.
If you buy someone a pair of tefillin, every time they put them on, you get credit, even though they're completing the mitzvah, you still get thing. So I've heard what he said before. I heard it in another shir, but it doesn't really seem like that holds true in actuality.
In what case, for example?
He's saying whoever completes the mitzvah gets the credit, but if you buy someone tefillin and every time they put it on, you're getting credit for it.
So you might be getting credit for the fact that he's putting on the tefillin, but not necessarily the mitzvah of tefillin that he's putting on.
So that when he says you get the credit for completing the mitzvah, that doesn't mean your credit is zero and you don't have zero mitzvah in general.
Right, that's what I was just saying to him.
Okay.
I was just saying to him. It doesn't mean to say that he gets 100% and he gets nothing.
Yeah.
He might get 100% of the mitzvah and he might get reward for trying to it. And beyond that, there's even a source to indicate that he gets a reward as if he had done it himself.
It's like aiding the mitzvah.
More because of what the dynamic that he was saying, that if a person sincerely intends to do something, but is prevented from doing so because of reasons beyond his control, God says, I see that this person would have done it if he had not been barred from doing so. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to give it the credit as if he's done it. So, in any case, in this plane of existence, people are going to be living, therefore, in great tranquility and expanded consciousness, which you see is not the case nowadays. People are not at all tranquil. They're very uptight, and they're not at all of expanded consciousness. They're actually quite narrow-minded. But after the world is changed, it will be quite different. V'lo yimotzu nezikim, there will not be harm and damage. V'lo hefsedim, and not loss klal at all. V'hu ma shehiftichu hanevim, and this is what was promised to us by the prophets. For example, Isaiah, who said, Lo yereu, they will not cause evil. V'lo yashchisu, and they will not destroy. B'chol har kodshi, and anywhere on my holy mountain. The author seems to understand that the holy mountain is not a reference just to Mount Zion or Jerusalem, but the entire world. The entire world would become like God's holy mountain, and there will therefore be no evil and no damage and no destruction.
We're about to answer the first question.
What?
That's it, it's about to answer that question we had at the beginning.
Oh, in the text?
Yeah.
We haven't seen it yet? So let's see. V'lo hiyeh sichlus ba'olam, nor will there be foolishness in the world, by which he means to say spiritual foolishness. There will not be folly. Ella kol halavavos yihiyu melei chochma. All of the hearts, everybody's heart, or anybody who merits to be there, will merit to have a heart which is full of wisdom. V'ruach hakodesh yihei shafuch al kol basar, and divine inspiration will be poured upon all flesh. Boifen sheyisku lo hakol, in order that all will merit through this great knowledge, bli koshi klal, without any difficulty at all. V'uma she'amar hanavi, and this is what was said by the prophet Yoel, Eshpoch es ruchi al kol basar, I will pour forth my spirit on all flesh, so that this flesh, physicality, will become anointed with the luster of spirituality, and it will glow and glisten in the light of Hashem. V'nei yismuchu v'yaltzu b'rov ha'tova, people will be happy and they will be elated through great goodness, spiritually speaking. And I imagine the material bounty will follow in suit. V'hem izdabkim b'borei yizborach, and they will cleave to God. V'oivdim lefonav avoda shalema, and they will serve God in a complete, whole, and perfect way. V'al yedei hiyu mis'alim v'holchim ilui al ilui. In this way, they will be raised level upon level. And we spoke yesterday about how even after resurrection, there will be a mobility, there will be an upward movement. Ad sheyagiu lema shetzorich sheyagiu lo, until each person will arrive to the level that he is intended to arrive. Lavor mimeno elemotzav v'nitzchius b'chidush ha'olam. Lavor mimeno, in order to pass, lavor mimeno, to pass from it to his eternal state once this world has been renewed. So you see from here, the author is saying that, I think it's implicit in what he's saying here, this idea that we were talking about yesterday, that even after resurrection, there will be initial period of movement, of mobility, where the soul is moving the person along gradually until he attains the level that he is going to enjoy for the rest of eternity. And each person is going to kind of come to rest at the place where his initial effort sent that soul in the trajectory of, right? So one person here, another person here, another person here, every person according to the place where that trajectory that he set for himself levels off. So it's quite interesting when he says that this is going to be a state where people have serenity and, like I said, harvacha, a widening of consciousness, even though here he said prosperity. But people are not going to be, as we've seen, eating or drinking. And they're not going to be engaged in the material world at all in the way that we're used to. So he's not talking about material prosperity at all. There's not going to be eating or drinking or any of these things. They're going to be bodies, but no material functions. The question is, why would therefore God create resurrected bodies if they're not acting like bodies? Which is, by the way, one of the major reasons why the commentaries who understand the text that we were talking about yesterday, as you initially suggested, say that the world to come is talking about a spiritual world. No eating, no drinking, no procreation. Spiritual world, not physical. Why? Because Rambam says, what would be the point of there being bodies if they're not functioning as bodies? Rather, it must be talking about a state where there are no bodies. But the majority of commentaries disagree with the Rambam in this and say that no, we're actually talking about a world to come where there will be no eating, no drinking, no procreation, despite the fact that there will be bodies. And that's the novelty of the teaching. The question can be asked, what's the point of having those bodies if they're not engaged in bodily functions? So one of the answers that's given is that these bodies were responsible for enabling the soul to attain this spiritual upleading state. The soul was in the body, and the body did enable the soul to have mobility through the world and perform the Torah and the mitzvahs and things that got it to this state of reward. And since God is a perfect judge and is not mekapeach schar kol birya, he doesn't withhold the reward of any creature. So God, in his righteousness, has to reward the body as well.
The body's not a creature, it's just like an outfit.
The body had a part, however, as a partner in this perfection.
That's like rewarding the paper for teaching us Torah because it contains the paper, because it contains the wisdom. It's like, there's no, take the soul out of the body, it's just a...
That's an interesting way of putting it, but the relationship of the body to the soul is different than the paper to the person. But I realize your point, but nevertheless, the body is a living organism, the venue through which, right, the person did attain this perfect.
If you take the neshama out, is it still
That's why it's a partnership. Without the soul, the body couldn't have done it. Without the body, the soul couldn't have done it. So that...
But a soul can exist without a body, whereas a body only functions when there's a soul present.
That's true, but what the point here is that what earned the reward was the body-soul combination. So therefore, what should deserve the reward and enjoy that reward should also be the body-soul combination.
But the issue lies with the fact that if we still have our bodies, there's still going to be exertion. We're going to have to, as we spoke last time, like walk from A to B, and like we're bounded by space, which.
So those physical bodies are nevertheless going to be spiritualized, so that when they're rewarded in the world to come, they're not rewarded in material terms. The body is rewarded in spiritual terms, which means the body itself has to be spiritualized.
So we wouldn't be in one place at one time, for example.
I think there would be a physical finite dimension to the body, but that body is not going to be dependent on food, for example, or drink. It's going to be a spiritualized body, which is somehow also delighting in the presence of God.
And what about sleep? Is sleep something that disappears?
Sleep is not mentioned, if I remember correctly.
There's no to sleep.
But presumably the body will not need to sleep. The soul will not need to be rejuvenated anymore.
There's some bodies in the grave that are
Still intact, still alive.
intact, not alive.
The Gemara implies even alive. There's a certain Gemara which implies even alive. Rabbi Nachman spoke from within the grave after having been dead for several generations. Therefore, this is the idea that the bodies will be resurrected in order for the body to receive its reward for its part in attaining the world to come. Only that reward is not going to be this worldly, it's going to be next worldly. And therefore, these are going to be spiritualized bodies which will not need physical maintenance. And it will be something akin to the idea, it's like an analogy. If you take a piece of iron ore, some rusty old chunk of metal from the ground, it's very dark and opaque and material. But when you throw into a fiery furnace, it absorbs that energy to the point where it can become a glowing red piece of energy. Yes, a glowing piece of energy, and not a dark, opaque piece of earth, even though it's the same thing. What's the difference? The difference is it becomes transformed because of the energy that is imbued within it, that's infused into it. And so that'll be the difference between the body as we know it and the body in the world to come. The body in this world is really like an opaque, dark piece of earth. It's like a clod of earth. Yeah? But in the world to come, the soul is going to be so brilliantly shining within the body that the body becomes imbued and infused with that energy so that you no longer see a body. What you see is soul. You see an emanating piece of spirituality. And that's what that body is going to be like. And that will be the eternal state, according to most opinions. This period of resurrection is going to be involving a spiritualized body, which is elevated by that soul, living symbiotically together on that person's level of perfection forever. And that represents the greatest degree of perfection, because it is the reconciliation between what would otherwise seem to be the polar opposites of the physical and the spiritual. But rather, this is going to be the extreme expression of the oneness of God, showing that everything, in fact, is one. Both material and spiritual are all God. And people are going to be living on that kind of palpable level of realization of the oneness of God everywhere. The Rambam, however, differs, and from the reasoning that you just suggested, kind of indirectly, was that in the end of the day, as great of a body as there may be during resurrection, and the Rambam certainly agrees with the fact that there will be resurrection, and those resurrected bodies will be different than the ones we know, but it's nevertheless a body and not a soul. And therefore, this idea of resurrecting the bodies in order to give them reward is only temporary. And once that body has been fully rewarded in a spiritual sense, the person has to die, and the souls are divested again of those bodies, so that now the soul can attain its pure, complete, and perfect reward in the spiritual realm, uninhibited in any way by a body, even though that's a spiritual body. It would still limit the reward of the soul. So according to the Rambam, the period of resurrection is a great period of reward, but primarily for the body, in order to reward it for its role. But once that's done, the soul is then liberated entirely from its body and unfettered, able to enjoy the complete and perfect pleasure of God forever. Most other commentaries differ with the Rambam in this point, and the Kabbalists as well, and say no, that great pleasure that the Rambam is describing existing for the soul without the body actually takes place with for the soul together with the body. But those are the two ways of looking at it. According to the Rambam, therefore, then even after the soul leaves this body and goes to the soul world, and even after that soul is returned to the bodies in the world of resurrection, bodies will still die at some point after resurrection, returning back to the soul world for the world to come, part 3, which is going to be the period of the ultimate reward. Okay, let's end here so that you guys have a chance to take a break before the next class, and we'll continue again and more of this next time.